Wanted to jump on here today and share with you something that I've been working quite a while on. The last week or two, I've kind of been on a big recovery kick. I've been training hard for a couple of months, and I feel like I needed a little bit of rest. Not only that, but I had a big competition coming up, and I just wanted to taper off my training and do some like a little bit of extra recovery, and that got me to thinking. Let me kind of do a deep dive on what it is that I do for recovery, what's effective for recovery, how you can use that and leverage recovery tactics to make sure that you keep progressing with CrossFit, and that you can keep moving forward with your goals, and all while staying injury free and maximizing your recovery. So I put this big presentation together, and I thought that I would just put a whole comprehensive guide together for you, everything related to recovery. So I welcome you to the Recovery Mastermind and how to maximize your progress while training CrossFit. So let's get into it. So first, really, let's define what is recovery. So recovery in this context is your body's readiness to take on a physical stressor. So for our sake, it's really the workout of the day. So the WOD, being able to take on that physical stressor of the WOD. So if you look at the diagram right in the middle here, this is where we take on stress. So this first big dip, this line here, straight across here, is basically homeostasis. So this is where our body is. If we're not doing any kind of recovery, we're not working out, we're just kind of existing. Our body will stay at homeostasis, so our body's pretty good at doing that. So this first little stressor here is basically the workout of the day. Okay, so our body takes on this training stimulus, which is very impactful depending on the intensity of the workout and depending on what the workout is specifically. So if we think about something, like anywhere from like a Fran to a Murph, so like you can have like that really short burst of intensity that's gonna definitely have you feeling, like you're taking on some stress, or maybe a longer, more consistent stress like a Murph that's going to take anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour. Either way, that stress is how our body reacts when we take on some sort of stress. Bottom here, that's basically all of the stress side. Then as our body begins to come back, so remember that this line right here is homeostasis, where our body wants to be. When we take on this stress from an external, or it could be an internal factor, our body wants to return to normal. So this is where we start to recover, okay? And then once we get above homeostasis and we get into that overcompensation or the compensatory response, this is where we get stronger, right? So if you think about this over time, this is exactly how we make progress, right? So if we get more fit, if we get stronger, if we get bigger muscles, all of that is done using this method here combined with time. So we're just always having a stress response, doing a recovery, getting a little bit stronger, and just repeating that over and over. Repeating that stress cycle over time is actually what's going to make us more fit and make us better. Short, looking at that kind of diagram, all we want to do is really chase recovery and avoid stress. And because obviously we just kind of covered that stress is a good thing in a way, but it can also be bad. So this is why we kind of need to have a little bit of a conversation about it. So what is stress? A stressor is a stimulus that our body receives from an external or internal factor that causes a response and alters our equilibrium. So remember that diagram. This is our response, and our body shifts kind of in a downward trend responding to that stressor. So there's two kind of responses. There's eustress, which is good stress, and de-stress, which is bad stress. So eustress, you can kind of think about it as like a workout of the day, running, lifting, anything that's going to basically have a positive impact on our body, but will give us a stress response. De-stress is going to give us that same stress response, but in a negative way. So think about injury, burnout, something like a spouse argument. It can be something kind of mental that you're dealing with, maybe the loss of a job, any kind of stressful situation that you might find yourselves in. You're fighting with a friend. All those kinds of things can have an impact on our stress, but not in a positive way. We have mental stress, which comes up as anxiety, rumination, and perfectionism. Physical stress, that can appear from too much physical activity, poor nutrition, or alcohol and drugs. This is a big one for CrossFitters because that physical stress we almost always rely on. And anytime that we see other stressors come up, we always think, let's go to the physical stress, because if I'm having some sort of emotional, bad day, I want to go work out about it, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it could lead to some type of bad response, and we'll dig into that more later. Then we have emotional stress, which can be defined by grief, loss, shame, or guilt. Existential stress, which will manifest as the feeling of meaninglessness, apathy, lack of purpose, and depression. Relational and social stress can be found in loneliness, isolation, cultural shifts, and lack of belonging. And lastly, environmental stress are often shown as violence, chaos, noise, and disrupted light or dark cycles. So there's all kinds of different avenues that we can take on stress, either in a positive way or a negative way. It's more than just physical. Oftentimes, because of CrossFit, we think it's like, that, well, if you think of stress in the normal terms, you probably think, something maybe to do with work or life. But, in the kind of physical context, we always think like, okay, I got CrossFit, we're going to have that physical response of doing a workout, doing something intense, lifting, breaking down the muscles, building them back up stronger. But we often forget that all of these exist at the same time. It's never just one. So all of these can be added up to something that we call allostatic load. Okay? So basically we can take, if you were to rate all of your stressors on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being super high, 1 being, very low, you can basically add all those up and get, some kind of sum that's going to give you your allostatic load. That's kind of a crude way of talking about it, but ultimately all of these will add up to form like a big stress, right? So if you have like really high environmental, really high emotional, really high physical, really low relational, really low existential, really low mental, then it probably all balances out in a way. Now, of course, any one of these things we know can be strong enough to take us out or make us burn out or to just take us out of the game completely. But oftentimes these are low enough that maybe they're not totally enough to take you out of the game, but if you add them up where you have a lot of mental stress, it's just all kind of culminating, that can be bad. So of course there's good ways to go about it. We can have that eustress, which is positive, but you can also have that de-stress, which is negative. So essentially what we want to do is encounter good stress but avoid bad stress. Remember earlier when I talked about we kind of want to avoid stress a little bit. Stress in the traditional sense of the term, absolutely want to avoid it. But good stress, we really want to encounter that. So I think what really drives the point home is this diagram here. You can see the answer is not no stress. If you have no stress, you don't really have anything to push against. But if you have too much stress, then it's just going to crush you. So there's kind of like a groove right in the middle where you have enough stress that you have something to push against, you have something to work for, you have kind of like something slowing you down, kind of like a weight vest, and you're not just free to do whatever you want, it's kind of just like enough to hold you back, so you feel like you're in that rockin' it mode, but obviously not enough to make you and resilient, and we definitely need something to kind of push against when it comes to stress. That's really where we get better, when we learn. If you think about back to that that graph that I first showed you guys, this is the stress where we get stronger. This whole cycle here, this is exactly what we want. So what are some of the most common forms of stress? In my opinion, these are probably the biggest that I see plaguing CrossFitters right now. Number one is alcohol. Obviously we like to work hard, we like to party hard, which is totally, I understand that. I do too sometimes. But ultimately, alcohol is really what's holding us back. Personally, I think the biggest aha moment for me was when I used my Whoop. I realized that just having one drink within like 2 to 3 hours of bed would absolutely put me in a red for recovery. It would just absolutely crush my recovery. So that's one thing I started avoiding, and it made me have a kind of like a aha moment to realize that alcohol is really kind of crushing my gains. So if you're someone that definitely drinks in excess once a week, and I'm talking about like you actually totally send it, then that might be something to look at. But also if you're someone that maybe likes to have a drink or two every single day, that might be something to reconsider as well. Now, I'm not saying that no alcohol if you're doing CrossFit, if you want to hit your goals. Of course you can do this while hitting your goals, but I think it's really the amount and the frequency that you have to take into account. So obviously not every week, not all the time, you can still do it. Second is shit sleep and sleep patterns. So if your sleep is super inconsistent, if your sleep is, low quantity, if you're getting like 4 to 5 hours of sleep a night, if you're a 5 a.m. CrossFitter that you're going to bed at, 11 or 12 and waking up at 4, that shit ain't enough. You need to really prioritize your sleep. So having that inconsistency in sleep is absolutely going to cause you a whole lot of stress, because then you have no process of dealing with stress. We sleep on sleep. Sleep is by far the most important. Number 3, stressful work environments, including travel. So obviously if you're traveling across time zones, you're doing a lot of travel, you're always in kind of like a new environment, that's going to add a lot of additional stress on your body, never being able to kind of make sense of the world. Remember homeostasis? We talked about homeostasis. Your body always wants the same. It craves consistency. So if we're always in an inconsistent environment, or even the work environment itself is consistently stressful, so like talking about like maybe you work on a factory floor that has you on your feet all day, loud noises, loud bangs, loud lights, people yelling at your ear, people telling you what to do, all those kind of things can add up and cause a whole lot of stress. And number 4, terrible diet. So food is fuel, and if you're not fueling yourself properly, not only are you going to work out, it's going to be shit, but you're not going to be able to have that ability to recover from those intense workouts. So if any of these are you, recovery protocols are even more important. So reduce the booze, get better sleep, eat better, and do what you can to relax. Obviously, we don't have a whole lot of control over our work environment, but if it's absolutely soul crushing, then maybe it's time for an exit strategy. So how do we deal with stress? It's just good recovery. There are 5 essential pillars of recovery. So first we have hydration. Second, we have sleep. Third, we have mobility. Fourth, we have nutrition. And fifth, we have meditation. Meditation's kind of like, I put an asterisk by that one because it's a little kind of a special case that I kind of deal with in a separate sense, but I still think it's important to talk about. So all of these together are going to help our bodies keep homeostasis and respond to stress. So first we have hydration. Individual hydration levels can vary, of course, so we're all different. Some of us are going to be 6'8" and 400 pounds. Some of us are going to be 4'9" and 90 pounds. Obviously, those people don't need the same hydration levels. So it depends, but generally speaking, I usually go with 3 to 4 liters a day. Anything less than that, probably not enough. Again, unless if you're very small, then you might not need 3 liters of water. But if you're 6'8" and 400 pounds and work in a desert, you probably need more than 4 liters of water a day as well. So your intake can change if you live in a hot environment, for example, or if you have a job that's very intensive that makes you sweat. So if you're sweating all day, you're going to need way, way, way more than 4 liters of water. I'm talking about 6, 8, 10 perhaps. And that's if you're sweating all the time. This also includes long WODs or competition. So if you're in a competition outside in the middle of summer where it's 110 degrees, absolutely, you're going to need more hydration. But generally speaking, 3 to 4 liters a day is usually enough. And as long as you're consistent, then that's good. Also, if you're interested, drop a comment looking for my competition guide. I have one of those. So if you have, it talks about kind of fuel, hydration, things like that. So if you want to copy that, just let me know and I'll get that to you. So water is important for so many metabolic functions. If you're dehydrated, things really start to go downhill. You start to feel sick, lethargic. You won't be able to perform as well. And of course, when it comes to CrossFit, we all want to perform well. Trying to focus on mobility when you're chronically dehydrated is like putting air in your car tires when you have no gas. It's not going to be helpful. Now, of course, if you need mobility, you can do that with hydration, but without hydration, it seems like a pointless endeavor. So next we'll talk about sleep. I don't want to say this lightly, and I think I need to repeat this as much as I can, but sleep is king. It is the most important thing that you should think about when it comes to recovery. I think, so like not even just CrossFit, just the entire North American population in general is sleep deprived. We don't know, we all think that we're some sort of special individual that like, no, I can get by on 3 to 4 hours of sleep because, I rise and grind and that's what I do every day. You're not that person. It's like, what do they say? Like, sorry, you're not that guy. You're not that guy, pal. No, it's, Sleep I think is absolutely important. Getting 7 to 9 hours a day, it's so crucial. I know that we can't always do it. We live super busy lives, so sometimes it's absolutely necessary to get up early so we can try to be more productive. But that doesn't mean that we can't prioritize sleep to our fullest capability. It's definitely been an absolute game changer for me when it comes to fat loss, when it comes to performance, when it comes to just aesthetics and kind of putting on muscle and my body recomposition. Sleep has been a huge aspect of that. Not only that, but just dealing with like stress levels in general. I'm not just talking about all stress, just like my stress, dealing with anxiety, things like that. Sleep has been huge. So pulling out all the stops to get the quality and quantity of sleep that you will need will be an absolute game changer. I promise you that. Whether your goal is fat loss, muscle gain, or just straight up performance, sleep is going to be the thing for you. It helps us regulate our metabolic functions and is a key factor in determining our circadian rhythms. So again, remember homeostasis. Circadian rhythms is basically thrives on homeostasis. So the more consistent and regular you are, the better it is for you and your body. So I'll put together some sleep guidelines here. Number 1, you want to wake up and go to sleep at the same time every day. Right back to homeostasis and consistency. Being consistent with your sleep and wake cycles is going to help with that, and it'll be way easier on your body. Next, we want to get outside for a walk in the morning. Sun exposure helps regulate our circadian rhythm. Now, that seems kind of like, what does walking have to do with sleep? Again, it's weird because, you wake up, first thing you should do is get sun exposure. Helps you wake up naturally without having to use caffeine or anything like that. And it helps regulate our circadian rhythm. So again, going back to consistency and helping our body adjust to that. Sunlight is one of the biggest things that we can do. And I think I actually read a study. Now, I didn't include this because I don't really know a whole lot about this, but I think I saw this on the Andrew Huberman podcast about, your eyes can detect things at the peripheral of your vision going past. And apparently there's some kind of connection with that and a metabolic mechanism for wakefulness. So like if your vision sees things passing by, like say you're walking by houses or like cars driving by you, it helps wake you up. So apparently like walking in the morning is one of the best things you can do to actually wake yourself up. Way more powerful than caffeine. Talking about caffeine, number 3 is no pre-workout or caffeine after 3 p.m. So the half-life of caffeine in your body is roughly about 12 hours. Now, not saying that you cannot get to sleep with caffeine in your system. Of course, we know that because I'm sure there's some of you out there that have in the past probably drank a coffee and either fell asleep for a nap or just went to bed in general, and it hasn't been a problem. And a lot of people claim like, no, I can sleep on caffeine, no big deal. But I don't think we truly realize how much of an impact it actually has on our sleep quality. So if we try to reduce the amount of caffeine that we get leading up to bed, I think that's better. So I've heard people say like no caffeine after 12. I'm like, man, that's just when I'm getting started. I want to have caffeine after noon. So I try to cut mine off at around 3 p.m. to give me as much time as possible while still being kind of, okay with my schedule. That just want to cut off as much as I can leading up to when I go to sleep so that I'm ready and I fall asleep very quickly and it's not interrupted by caffeine. Number 4, no drugs or alcohol before sleep. So drugs and alcohol, though it help you fall asleep, again, it ruins your quality, so I just avoid those altogether if you can. 5, don't eat too much before bed. So kind of, if you think about it from like a thermogenic aspect of your body wants to divert energy to your intestines and your whole digestive tract when you're digesting food, that's going to be kind of distracting while you're trying to fall asleep. So not that you can't eat before bed, but let's not absolutely stuff ourselves with as much food as possible to hit our macros before going to bed. Number 6, no screens, phones, TV, TikTok 1 hour before sleep. That is because the light exposure that you get into your eyes from the screens actually will kind of disable the metabolic functions that you have for going to sleep, like your natural hormone and circadian rhythms. Will actually disrupt those and make it harder to fall asleep. And lastly, ensure the space is cool, dark, and noise-free. So our bodies love being in the cool when it's sleeping because that's kind of reflective of, it being dark and cold out in years past when we didn't have electricity and heat outside. Dark, of course, it's hard to sleep in the light, and noise-free, having no disruptions. Now, something like a fan, that is key. That is absolutely key for me. I love the droning noise, pink noise, white noise, all that kind of stuff. What you want to avoid is very random, sporadic, loud noises. So if you have something like a machine that kicks in or something for while you sleep, that might be something you want to avoid. So holy crap, we just went a whole lot deep on sleep. So the next is nutrition. Your nutrition is the fuel of your metabolic functions. If you don't eat enough, you eat like shit, recovery is going to be absolutely hard to achieve, okay? So there's no doubt about it that eating hyperpalatable, highly processed, corn starch, your corn oils and seed oils and all that kind of stuff is terrible for you. Not to say you can't have it, but if that comprises most of your diet, not only is that affecting probably a lot of metabolic processes in your body, but it's 100% impacting your recovery. So if you eat mostly nutrient-dense whole foods in adequate amounts, recovery is going to be a little bit easier for you. Of course, there's a balance. We don't want to prioritize recovery so much that we overeat, which I've been guilty in the past. I kind of use that that recovery excuse of like, hey, I'm fueling my body, so I just eat like an absolute asshole. I've been there, of course. So we don't want to just over prioritize that and overeat. It has to be a balance, but we want to make sure that we're eating enough that we are fueling our bodies and we're not under eating. So one thing to take into account there is your total daily energy expenditure, which is your TDEE. That is the amount of calories you need to consume daily to survive with your daily tasks and to fuel your workouts. So your TDEE is basically your basal metabolic rate, your BMR, plus your physical activity, plus the thermic effect of food, which is basically the energy cost that it takes to digest food. So the big challenge is trying to maintain a high recovery while losing body fat. So obviously, if we want to lose body fat, I think it's fairly common knowledge now that you need to be in a caloric deficit to lose body fat. Obviously, you can't be in too much of a caloric deficit if, again, you want to build lean muscle mass. It's a very slight caloric deficit. It's kind of a hard balance to strike. But also maintaining a high recovery during that is very difficult because, again, with CrossFit, you can go in one day, it can be very relaxed, very slow burning workout where you're just kind of giving it 60% for like a 30-minute period. Not a very intense workout. But then we can come the next day and it's like, hey, we have like a Fran on top of an Elizabeth, on top of a Kelly. All these things can be combined, have like just a brutal day. And not every day is the same. And when you don't have that consistency, it's hard to manipulate your diet in a, let's say, like a scientific or mathematical way to say like, okay, well, yesterday I did a very long EMOM and today I did a very intense workout, so I need to eat X amount more calories. It's really hard to make that comparison. So ultimately, I think as long as your nutrition is consistent, you have whole foods, you're eating nutrient-dense foods, all those kinds of things, then typically when it comes to nutrition and recovery, you're covering all your bases. So the only time that you might need to do a little bit of a deeper dive is if you have like a very specific micronutrient or vitamin deficiency. In that case, you'll have to see a medical professional to maybe get some blood work or to investigate that further. Of course, you can usually cover your bases just with basic nutrition by eating whole foods and covering that macronutrient, micronutrient, and vitamin profile. But it might be something worth investigating as well if you think that you're deficient in something. So with nutrition, to maximize your nutrition recovery, there's 6 rules that I go by. 1, eat 1.2 grams per pound of body weight of protein. So if you're 100 pounds, you eat 120 grams of protein. If you're 200 pounds, you eat 240 grams of protein. Number 2, eat 1 gram per pound of body weight of carbs. Number 3, eat nutrient-dense whole foods, which we already talked about. Number 4, eat consistently. Number 5, eat at your TDE plus or minus 10% based on your goals. So if you're looking for more hypertrophy, putting on muscle mass, and you want to eat above your TDEE, so you're putting on muscle mass, or you want to be 10% lower than your TDE if you're looking at a little bit of a weight loss. So again, number 6, you want to supplement appropriately. So again, things like vitamin D, if you feel like you're deficient, would be more than sufficient. So next, let's get into mobility. Mobility is the ability to have strength within a given range of motion. Okay, so the better your mobility, the more likely you can maintain strength in your flexibility and to get into difficult positions. So if you think about maybe the overhead position in the bottom of a snatch, perhaps just in the overhead position of a press, lots of very funny positions like that kind of come up in CrossFit. So I think mobility is definitely something that absolutely needs to be done. So this helps us as athletes to prevent injury, maintain movement standards, and improve efficiency of our WODs. So this is kind of where I was talking about meditation is a little bit of a weird term, in that maybe we're not sitting on a couch, with our fingers together, kind of making an om sound. That's not really what I see as meditation. Anyway, we'll cover that in the meditative part. So if you have the extra funds, invest in a mobility app. GoWOD, ROMWOD, they're all great. Just following mobility flows. There's not a whole lot of thought that has to go into it. You just follow what's on the screen. And typically with the test, they'll automatically tell you what you're deficient in, and we'll just program the types of mobility that you should be doing to improve. So say if you're really bad overhead or you have terrible ankle mobility, then we'll just program those ankle, lower body, posterior chain, overhead position type mobility flows, and then you don't even have to worry about it. So if you have the extra money to invest in one of these, I think it's like $10, $15 a month perhaps, and they usually give you a trial month. So there's a no-brainer to even try it. If you like it and it's a game changer for you, keep it. If not, it was worth a try. So here you can find weak points and tight areas, so you can improve and experiment with some movement flows you can find on YouTube as well. So I included a GoWOD mobility flow on YouTube, which is free. This is with Steph Chung. I'm pretty sure the player would play it for you right here in the training if you want to have a look at it. There are many free avenues available, so you don't have to absolutely subscribe to GoWOD or ROMWOD. But if mobility is the thing for you, then definitely chase it. And here we are with meditation. So meditation is a mix. This is my opinion. This is not really the definition of here. This is kind of my opinion on meditation. It's a mix of mindfulness, breath work, and relaxation. Okay, it helps us reduce stress, deal with emotions, reduce anxiety, and improve sleep, which is the king of recovery. And there's so many more other functions when it comes to meditation. So personally, I got ahead of myself. Personally, I find traditional meditation is difficult. So again, we talked about sitting on the couch or a cushion, fingers together, and we're kind of making that om sound. That's not kind of that's traditional. That is traditional meditation, but it's not kind of how I see meditation playing a role in my recovery practices. So I kind of get the meditation by using two methods. One is walking. The second is mobility. So walking is great because you can decompress, get out in nature, unplug, all of these things while doing an activity. So you're kind of doing a value-added activity for recovery because it's active recovery, but then you're also, you're out in nature. Maybe you're listening to music, you're with your thoughts. It could be something like you're on the telephone or anything like that, but either way, I think it's a good way of just having a meditative practice that's not actually meditation. So mobility can be meditative as well, just by unplugging, stretching, listening, and being mindful of your body and how it feels, focusing on breathing. So all these kind of aspects are bringing kind of the pillars of traditional meditation, but into a different sense. So of course, you can do mobility while watching TV, and you're kind of maybe a little bit brain dead just while following it. Of course, that's fine, but maybe you can amplify it a bit by doing some breath work, or just closing your eyes and kind of being with your thoughts, or having a mindful connection with your body and understanding, okay, I'm stretching my hamstrings now. Feels like a good stretch. Maybe I can go a little bit deeper. Those kinds of things. So it can be a form of meditation without even knowing it. And I think that's kind of super powerful. So to de-stress and promote recovery with meditation, one, we can do traditional meditation if that's what you like. You can go for a 30-minute walk. You can do some mobility. Take 5 minutes to relax. You can listen to your favorite music or do something you enjoy. I think the biggest part that we want to achieve from this is just getting out of the, unplugging from I guess you want to call it the matrix. Get away from the internet, get away from your job, do something you enjoy, relax, take a deep breath, and just unplug. I think that's the best thing we can do when it comes to meditation. I also include a 10-minute mindfulness guided meditation here from Calm on YouTube if you want to listen to that as well, and if you wanted a meditative resource. So how can we tell if our recovery is good or bad? So if your recovery is bad, you can usually tell. You feel like shit, you're tired, you're stressed, kind of maybe you feel hungover. I don't know, maybe you are hungover. motivation is low, you just don't feel well. The list goes on with that kind of stuff. If your recovery is good, it's a little harder to tell because maybe you're feeling fantastic and you're in a groove and you're cruising and everything's going well, or maybe you just kind of feel normal. That could be a sign of good recovery as well. So a device like Whoop, which is, the recovery board is kind of shown here in the diagram, it can help you determine that for you. It's a tool like any other fitness, and I'm not dead set on Whoop. I have it. I use it every day. I find it pretty powerful for what I like to use it for. But at the end of the day, it's just a tool. It's just information that's going to help you in making an informed decision and things like that. It's not 100% accurate, just like any fitness tracker or anything when it tracks your steps or your calories. It's not super active, but I find it helpful because, it's not that, hey, you're in the red, your recovery's shit, get it together and take a day off. It's like, no, of course your body kind of plays the ultimate role in deciding whether that's good or not. But I think it helps you kind of enforce good habits. So when I see that my recovery is low, it's not that I take a day off per se, but maybe it's like, okay, maybe I should go for a walk. Maybe I should decompress. Maybe I should improve my nutrition a little bit. And all those kind of things that helps us reinforce positive habits, I think is a no-brainer to help us move forward. So if something like Whoop is something you want to go for, give it a try. If not, you can kind of use your own physical cues to determine that. So the takeaways that I hope that you got from this training is that first, we want to improve our recovery by 1, staying hydrated, 2, having a balanced nutrition of whole foods and nutrient-dense foods, 3, get amazing sleep that's super consistent day to day, 4, do mobility on a fairly regular and consistent basis to make sure that we're injury-free and we're staying strong in those awkward and highly flexible positions, and 5, meditate. Not necessarily meditation, but get out for a walk, do something that's kind of relaxing. And we wanted to reduce stress by 1, being consistent, 2, reduce alcohol consumption, 3, improve your environments, and 4, lastly, I didn't really cover this at all, but therapeutic conventions. So if you're actually feeling super stressed, maybe you're dealing with some mental things as well, seek some therapy. Any kind of therapeutic interventions would be super helpful for that as well. So I hope you found this training super helpful or valuable. That's kind of everything that crosses my mind when it comes to recovery. I just wanted to kind of get it all in one comprehensive training for you guys. So feel free to message me or comment on this video if you want a physical copy of this training, and I'll get it over to you. And yeah, I hope this was super valuable for you, and I'll see you in the next training.